Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Point Counterpoint. Here's your host, Got Mark 76. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Point Counterpoint. I am your host, Scott Mark 76, aka Mark Lindsay, and I'm joined, as always, by my tag team partner. We call him Mac. You can call him the Mac Daddy. That is Mr. Bob Stedford. Bob, how are you today?
Hey, what's going on, Mark? How you been, buddy? It's been a while since we've done this. I'm looking forward to talking to you again about our favorite thing in life, professional wrestling.
That is correct. And, I needed a mental break. We discussed in the past how COVID has really kind of just driven a wedge between a lot of fans and the product itself. But then you had baseball and hockey playoffs, basketball playoffs come back. And it's, between my work, between everything else going on, I was like, I just don't feel like talking wrestling. It was just, but I'm glad to be here.
It's like we got the whole world back at once, and then it's just too much at once.
Absolutely.
And to be honest, wrestling hasn't been that great. So it's, if we could divert our attention somewhere else, give somebody else a chance again. I mean, our Sixers are done. That's a shame. They're entering into a rebuild, but that's a story for another show.
That's true, and the team that we expected to do pretty well, they got shut out the other night. So
get the brooms out and start sweeping them away. Process over.
We have pretty much an exciting show. I'm really looking forward to our discussion because I know that you and we agree on some things and disagree on others. I'm looking forward to our debates. But we decided to do a state of AEW. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over several topics. We're going to go bounce back and forth with some ideas and opinions, and then have maybe people watching at home weigh in with what they think. And overall, AEW, people need to remember, yes, they started in January of 2019, but they've only been on TV since October. That is less than 1 year, Bob, and they've done very well for themselves. Yeah.
Coming up on a 1 year anniversary for the company that I think has had one hell of a first year on television, and as an existence as a company, they've done nothing but entertain and delivered upon what they said they were going to do.
And what I really like about them, and we'll get into this in depth later on, is that every single time they seem to have a bad show or maybe like a miss, they really come back strong the following week.
Well, it's like whenever you watch like one of your favorite dramas on TV, like in one season of 13 episodes, you're going to have that one filler episode where it's just to accomplish a couple points. And, they've had a couple of those in the history of Dynamite, and they're fine. They serve their purpose, and then they bounce back the next week, and it's back to business as normal.
Absolutely. Well, look, we're going to dive right in by starting at the top. Now, with AEW, the state of AEW, we have to discuss the champions.
Okay.
You currently have Jon Moxley as the World Heavyweight Champion. You have Kenny Omega and Hangman Page as the Tag Team Champions.
And Mr. Brody Lee as your
Brody
newly
Lee.
crowned AEW TNT Champion.
I know you and I were really big fans of how the end of that Dynamite went off the air.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I was going bonkers, but just to put a bow tie on our champions, we have Hikaru Shida as our AEW Women's Champion.
And, Bob, I'd like to start with the Women's Champion first, if we may, because right behind you is, in my opinion, the most entertaining part of the women's division, who makes her return to television next week when she takes on Big Swole with, who's her tag team? Penelope Ford, that's right. Philadelphia's own.
And Rebel.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a 3-on-1 handicap match.
So I would imagine Baker's going to spend most of the time on the outside to recover from her injury.
So the evolution to me of Britt Baker has been a very interesting one. She was almost insufferable as a babyface, and they saw that, and they made immediate changes, and now she, in my opinion, is in the top 3 conversation for heels in the entire company, not just women or men, all together, top 3 in my opinion. She's really welcomed this character, and she's doing a great job with this role model that she is, and just cocky, arrogant. She's smarter than you, and she's going to let you know it. She uses all her $1 million words when she's talking about dental problems. It's hilarious. She's warmed up to this character, and she's nailing it right now.
She is, and I was one of those people that was like, why is she here? I just did not get her, and I was pulling for her, but I just didn't.
Sure.
And her relationship with Tony Schiavone, it is it's entertaining.
It's just the best. The pulley system of notes she used to pass him when she was in her Pope-mobile golf cart. Oh man, that's just classic television. In my opinion, getting back to the champion, because we're talking about champions right now, Hikaru Shida is the first good women's champion that I think they've had so far. And the women's division, which we'll talk about later, in my opinion, has been the weak link of AEW. But I think they're getting themselves on the right track right now with Shida, Penelope Ford, Britt Baker, Big Swole, and then you have the two ladies that won the Women's Cup. Diamante?
Yeah, big fan. Yep.
I can't pronounce that name, but Ivelisse and Diamante, an impressive showing on Saturday and made their mark known. And they had a very nice one-on-one match a couple weeks ago on Dynamite as well.
Right, and we will talk more about the women's division later on. Let's talk about the tag team champions, Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page. Now, Bob, when they won the tag team championship, I always thought when they beat SCU that they were going to be transitional champions and they were just going to kind of get the belts off of them. They teased a breakup between the Elite, and then they didn't pull the trigger, and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And then it looked like everything was back on the same page. They had the Stadium Stampede match. You had that moment where Omega and the Inner Circle, the $5 winner shirt, right?
Yes, winner.
So they had that angle where they had Omega and Paige chug the beer or the shot and the milk.
Yeah.
And you thought it was over, and then they went back in because of the FTR. And Paige are kind of, mixing pretty well with each other. So the tag team title division, they're having a huge match next week, a gauntlet match. And the winners are going to face the champions at, All Out in September?
All Out September 5th, 1 week from this Saturday. So the winners of that gauntlet match are going to go on to face Omega and Paige. And I really feel like this is where they swap the belts off. And I think it's time to put them on FTR.
Absolutely.
And I love, when AEW first started, they said they were going to bring tag team wrestling back to prominence. And I think they've really done just that. And I was a little skeptical at first when they put the tag titles on two singles wrestlers, which is one of my least favorite things to see in wrestling. I like a tag team that has the same gear. I like them to have a tag finish. I like them to come out together. And I like them to work together as a tag team with double team moves and things like that. And, seeing Omega and Page, I'm like, what are they doing? They've got all these great tag teams. You've got Jurassic Express, Private Party. You've got MJF and Wardlow. You've got, I said Private Party, Proud and Powerful, Santana and Ortiz. And the Young Bucks.
Let's not forget Butcher and Blade. I think they're a very underrated tag team.
And I feel bad for not even saying, because they're one of my favorite tag teams right now. Them and the Lucha Bros, and there's something interesting going on there right now with Eddie Kingston with that little wink to the camera the other night. But
that was great.
Tell what that's going to hold.
Right, because you make it wonder. Was he winking to us or was he winking to somebody else? And
I don't know. He was breaking down the fourth wall there. Little Zach Morris wink to the camera. And I don't know. I'm looking forward to All Out. If I had to put my money on it, I think FTR takes the tag titles and beats the Young Bucks to the race.
FTR, newly managed by Tully Blanchard, which I love very much.
Absolutely. Well, no, you got to drop the. They're dropping threes.
That's how it is now.
But soon enough, it's happening.
I would imagine when a certain somebody is done filming a TV show that there might be four, but we'll get into that too.
Who's filming a TV show?
Cody is filming a TV show for Stars called Heels.
Oh, Heels with Stephen Amell.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a brand new TNT champion, speaking of Cody, Mr. Brody Lee from the Dark Order. And I'll tell you what, we'll kind of bring this into it too, Bob, that the end of Dynamite. Now, for those of you who didn't watch it, check your DVRs because it was on Saturday night at 6:30. after the NBA playoffs, an awkward time, but still had a very respectable rating. And the last 10 minutes of that show, this was a beatdown. This was a legit getting Brody Lee over, which was something. Right.
It was absolute assault. It was not a match. So, to me, my biggest problem with the internet is the people that hate AEW refuse to open up their eyes and see what's going on. And, oh, Cody's not getting talent over. Cody's not doing this. 4 weeks, Cody went out there. He had competitive matches.
Sonny Kiss? Sonny Kiss? When was the last time you ever saw Sonny Kiss on Dynamite?
I'm glad he did it because now I think highly of Sonny Kiss. But every week he's been having competitive match after competitive match. And then for Brody Lee to just step in here and demolish him the way he did makes Brody Lee that much stronger and establishes the Dark Order finally as a legitimate threat to the entire roster.
I'm glad you mentioned that because the Dark Order was very interesting right around the time of the Exalted One reveal. You know, we all kind of thought it could be Matt Hardy. It ended up being Brody Lee, Mr. Brody Lee. And then...
you better put the Mr. on it and put some respect on his name.
I will. And you know what? Part of me is upset. This is where I'm going to kind of go into my disdain for the Dark Order, is that I watch BTE. It's kind of a behind-the-scenes poking fun at wrestling, right. And they have made the Dark Order a joke on that show. They've become a comedy act where I don't like it. I don't like what they did. And then this happens on Saturday. You get Mr. Brody Lee over as a huge monster who's no longer, because he was kind of just floating there. He was a talent that wasn't doing much.
He was somebody I was worried that was going to go the Lance Archer way. Like they bring in this big menacing heel, and he's got his title match, or he's got the match in the tournament to win the title, and he fails. And what has he done since? And you brought in Mr. Brody Lee. He faced Jon Moxley for the championship. Great match. Yep. And then after that match, what has he done? Now all of a sudden, you're putting it all out there. The wheels are turning full steam ahead. Mr. Brody Lee is a threat right now.
Well, Mr. Brody Lee and Lance Archer, as you mentioned, we'll talk more about them later on in the show, but they challenged the World Heavyweight Champion for that title. That was Mr. Jon Moxley.
Yes.
And Jon Moxley defeated Chris Jericho back at February's Revolution. And then, of course, COVID happened. And Jon Moxley will be facing MJF, one of the best, if not the best, heels in the business right now.
Papa. Oh, that promo on Saturday was so good.
It was great.
Dying laughing. He really has such a hand to this character right now.
He does, and part of me wishes that he was the one that beat Jericho because Moxley will bring eyes to the product. There's no doubting that, but as we're seeing in WWE with Drew McIntyre, which we'll talk about the state of WWE on a future program.
Do we have to?
Yes, because I think it's important.
All right, fine.
The lack of a crowd at the attendance has really, I believe, hurt Jon Moxley. He was super over. I mean, coming through the stands, that was his main thing, and now he doesn't have that. It's not the same. And
he was absolutely white hot before COVID happened. And for me, I agree with you. I don't think they should have taken the belt off of Jericho. But hindsight is 20/20. Like the work Jericho's doing now with Orange Cassidy, if you could go back in time and rewind to before COVID, I'd argue to keep the belt on Jericho until Cassidy could get it off him.
Oh God, I don't know about Cassidy being champion now. I mean,
but it's weird enough to work.
I guess, but then I don't know. I disagree with you there.
You have Orange Cassidy as a transition champion for a guy like MJF to beat the piss out of him and take that belt off.
Well, that's true. And you know what? Let's go to our next topic then, Bob. And that is the single stars. So let's start with Orange Cassidy. You brought him up.
Okay.
So look, I'm a fan of his work. Anything that pisses off Cornette, I'm kind of a fan of, just despite. But I don't see him as challenging for any championship, let alone the world championship. So I'd like to hear why you think he would have made a good champion to beat Jericho.
Well, so I don't necessarily think he'd be a good champion, but in hindsight, like I said, it would be certainly interesting and it would draw eyeballs. Like, what are you going to do with this guy as champion? And like, you could just build him as a champion that squeaks by every time, and then like he faces MJF for the first time, squeaks by on some sort of roll up. Like, it's never a dominating performance. Like, he's just a guy that when he tries, he gets lucky. But for me, like, you know, like I said, hindsight. But nowadays, Orange Cassidy is where he should be. Like, he's an attraction, and what he's doing with Jericho is great. I'm enjoying it, but you know, I don't think he's championship material. But it certainly would be interesting to pull the trigger there and see what they do with it.
I'm still going to disagree with you. You didn't win me over. I'm sorry about it. But I'll tell you what, my favorite in the promotion, and that's because everything he does is gold, and we just saw it this past Saturday, is Cody. Cody is he has to be considered the MVP in the singles division. Now, you can say Jericho would make a case for that too, for putting over guys like Cassidy and so forth. But Cody has been involved in some of the best storyline telling since AEW started. And I got to give Cody... another name I wanted to talk to you about, and this is where we could talk about Lance Archer. You brought up a great point. You kind of stole my thunder that whether it was Cody... Oh, you're forgiven this time. Whether it was Cody or whether it was Moxley or Jericho, they brought these guys in to challenge for a championship. They build up this great storyline, and then they're not seen from again. Lance Archer, Brian Cage. I mean, Brian Cage is kind of in a group with Taz. He's the FTW champion. We didn't mention that in our champions. But in my mind, they have all this talent, and now they're at the point where like they don't know who to use, who to push, and they're kind of in the state of flux.
Well, to me, it's a simple problem of you don't have enough TV time. Like they have such a talented roster, and so many guys are just itching for that spotlight that I think would thrive in it. But you just don't have enough TV time. Like, my biggest complaint about Monday Night Raw is it's 3 hours, and it's insufferable. But at the same time, I want to argue that I want a third hour of Dynamite every week, or I want a separate night of another 2 hours. I can't get enough. For example, this past Saturday, I was chomping at the bit. I'm ready for this Thursday coming up on Dynamite. I want to know, is the Nightmare family dead? Is Arn Anderson still breathing? Like, I need updates. Like, I need to know. I'm emotionally invested right now, and that's a nice thing to be. But as far as your single stars being built, like, you have your Lance Archer and your Brian Cage, and like, there's just not enough TV time to do what they want to accomplish, I think. And at this point, I think they're being a little overly ambitious.
And they kind of take dark and they kind of use that to get people wrestling, but there's not Dynamite quality matches. It's one talent getting over on jobbers.
Have you actually watched Dark?
I've watched some of it. I can't watch it. I try.
The last 2 to 3 matches every week on Dark. They're doing like 13 matches on Dark. Last 2 to 3 matches every week are main event quality. Like, what did I just watch on there? I watched SCU and Private Party versus the Lucha Bros and Butcher and Blade. And, like, that was a nice, like, that could have fit well into Dynamite. Mm-hmm. But, like, I do agree with you. They need to make it less of, like, a Sunday Night Heat and more of a secondary show and advertise it more. I do like that on Dynamite you do get the bottom line scroll of the results because they do have the win-loss record. So it's nice seeing – and then you see every once in a while a name like Brian Pillman Jr. pop up. You're like, oh, man, Brian Pillman Jr. is on Dark. I got to watch Dark now. But, you know, to get back to the problem, they just need more time.
I would agree with that. And I think it would be disrespectful to bring up single stars in the promotion and not mention another guy that I've kind of didn't really think too much of until he came to AEW, and that's Hager. Jake Hager. You know, here's a guy that we kind of read off as some, you know, we the people, and whatever. And Jericho, the first night he came out, said that was stupid creative by promotion.
It's a
And
bad idea by bad creative.
yes, and Hager has been a dominant force, not too dominant, but dominant enough that every time he steps in the ring, you're wondering, is he going to go over or is he going to give the guy the rub? You just don't know.
But what's his? I disagree with you. I am not a fan of Jake Hager. I don't see his worth. Like, I'd almost rather get rid of him and put Archer in as the heater of the inner circle.
Well, then what do you do with Jake? Jake and Archer are great together.
I just don't give a shit about Jake Hager. I don't like. Sure, like he serves. I like when he gets on a promo. His match that he had with Cody at what was it, Fighter Festival, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
They aired that special. It was boring as shit, and like I got terrified at the end of it because they set it up because it was a schmoz finish. I thought we were going to get more of it. Thankfully, they didn't go that route. But like I can't get into it. Like he still flags to me, and I can't get past that. It's the same with Moxley. Like, I just don't care about Moxley. He's hashtag not my champion, MJF 2020, if I'm making a political statement here on the show.
Sounds good. Let's get to our next topic. We kind of made mention of this earlier, Bob, when we mentioned FTR and the tag team division. So we have the tag division. We'll bring up that, okay? We also have
Inner Circle. Are we throwing this up for the Elite?
No.
Or are we throwing it up as the FTR and Tully?
FTR and Tully, because that's all I care about. Listen, the faction I want to talk about, let's just cut through the chase. The Four Horsemen at some point are coming back. Cody Rhodes, Conrad owns the rights to the name.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they're coming back.
Yes.
I see one of two things happening. I see FTR with Tully, obviously.
I'm just going to sit back and let you talk because I think I know what's happening too. So I want to see where you're going.
So Shawn Spears could be a third member. I see one of two things happening. Either number one, and which I would love to see, is that the son of a plumber becomes the nature boy of the Four Horsemen, and that's Cody Rhodes joins Horsemen, and you have Tully and Arn as the managers of the Four Horsemen. I mean, how awesome would that be? But you can't ignore the fact that there's a connection between FTR and Hangman Adam Page. So I also see where maybe Shawn Spears, who I think would be the weak link of the group. I mean, maybe he wins matches on Dark, okay, but he doesn't do much, has pictures of Tully on his drawers on pay-per-views. I think it's a setup where maybe Shawn Spears comes in, they announce the Four Horsemen. Whatever night they do it, they're going to announce the Four Horsemen. And then Cody's going to say something like, oh, you don't think you're in this, do you? And then Adam Page comes out. I can see Cody, Page, and FTR being the Four Horsemen. I think that would be phenomenal. Because we mentioned earlier BTE. When's the last time Cody made an appearance on Being the Elite? When's the last? I mean, we see Hangman Page every once in a while, but he's usually doing something with FTR.
Forever ago.
There is some storyline telling that is being done through that show that Cody Rhodes is his own man, and he's no longer part of the Elite.
I agree. All right, so I'm kind of on the similar wave of thinking as you are, but I think Spears stays in with FTR. I think Spears is going to fill in that kind of Arn Anderson enforcer role, but where you stand with Cody, what's the golden rule for Rhodes in wrestling? You don't trust an Anderson.
Of course.
You cannot trust an Anderson, and I don't trust Arn Anderson right now as far as I can throw him, especially after Cody just lost that title and Arn took a beating. I think he's had enough right now, and I think Adam Page somehow fills that void. Or do they even go even bigger with a swerve and have Kenny Omega fill that void?
I hope not. I'm not a fan of Omega. I'm not a fan of Kenny. Nope.
Hold on, we'll get back to that. But do you see what I'm talking about? Like every week, Kenny's Kenny's pushing the limits. Like, we're getting back to the cleaner a little bit here, his New Japan gimmick. And, like, it's just he pushes the limits of how far he can take. He's beating people. He beat down Jungle Boy after a match. For Christ's sake, like, why? Why are you beating down Jungle Boy? What did he do to you? He gave you a competitive match.
I think you're going to see the cleaner. I like the character of Kenny Omega's cleaner. And the Young Bucks. I think they're going to be the elite, and that's just going to be the faction. I don't think Kenny Omega has what it takes to, because Sean Spears isn't going to be the leader of the Four Horsemen. FTR will be the tag team. So you're going to need someone like a Cody who's good on the mic and great in the ring to be that, like, Ric Flair. And look, they might as well just call me Bob and let me be a writer for it. Tony Khan.
Me too.
Watch this show because he's an EVP. The biggest face in the company right now is Cody, which makes the best heel. And Cody, the night that this happens, Cody goes, "Oh, and by the way, remember when I said that I'll never get a world title match? Yeah, that's over. I'm challenging, let's say MJF. You know, I'm challenging MJF for the title.
A babyface MJF.
Yes,
What's happen, and the story's already there. It's bound to happen, and it's going to be a good thing when it does. But you know, to take a page out of Scooby-Doo, Cody is the red herring. He's not going to be part of the Four Horsemen. I just don't see it happening. Anderson's turning.
I understand that because you're right, but Cody would be the perfect fit.
And he would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for FTR.
So now that we have that over, let me we'll move on to our next topic.
All righty.
We mentioned this earlier, and we'll talk about the women's division. And, of course, Dr. Britt Baker, in my opinion, without even being a wrestler for the last few months, is at the top of that division. Now, division has taken – it's had some peaks and valleys. I think we should mention the injury to Chris Statlander because she was pretty interesting, a character. Nyla Rose, we haven't really seen much of her since Excuse Me became her manager.
Excuse me.
But I am a huge fan of Penelope Ford. Philadelphia's own Penelope Ford. Easy on the eyes, great in the ring.
She was the wing of the E 1 year, and for CW, she's really like she's on to something. She's on to something good, and she had a really good showing against Hikaru Shida, who, in my opinion, has been a great champion. But we need to see more from her. And that women's division has been lackluster from the start. Even Britt Baker herself was very lackluster when that division started. And then she's become a heel now, and sky's the limit for her as soon as she gets healthy. Like, I don't expect her to do anything except cover Big Swole this week on TV. I expect her to take a tag and cover. I don't think she's ready to wrestle yet. I think she gets in the ring, does the bare minimum, and she'll be good to go for All Out in a one-on-one match, hopefully against Big Swole. But like you said with Statlander, that was a huge loss because she had a lot of steam. She had a lot of crowd support. She was very talented in the ring. She had a good character. Like, she was working with all 5 tools. And then, what she tear her Achilles, I think?
Yeah.
Very unfortunate injury. So we're probably not going to see her till probably January-ish. Or maybe at Revolution at the end of October, November. But that was a huge loss for the women's division. But Penelope Ford, Big Swole, Britt Baker, they've all stepped up nicely. And then if you look at this women's tournament, you have ladies like Tay Connie stepping up from NXT. I think she's a great talent to have. She's not much on a microphone, but she can go in the ring. And she brings a legitimacy because she did UFC fighting, I believe, as well. Or not UFC, but MMA, you know.
Bob, who was the woman? I can't think of her name right now. She was like the scary, freaky monster.
Oh, yeah. That is somebody that's playing in weight. Abaddon.
I'll tell you, man, that was different. That was so, like, I remember we were on the Facebook group page, and in this corner, we were typing, like, that was amazing. I haven't seen her since.
At the same time was like, whoa, who's this? Because they did a vignette for Anna Jay to build her up, and then this other girl comes out, it's going to be a squash match, Anna Jay's got this. She got a vignette. She got that whole treatment. And then Anna Jay got squashed. And I'm like, whoa, this is an interesting character. What do we got here? Let's see what's next for her.
And Anna Jay, of course, a female member of the Dark Order, who was a big part of that closing.
Speaking of somebody that just took an enormous leap forward, Anna Jay this week was spotlighted big time.
Yeah.
Choking out Brandy Rhodes. Now, whether or not they meet at the pay-per-view or what, but surely you got to believe Anna Jay's due for something. She's very talented.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Dark Order, even Silver and Reynolds got over.
I like Johnny Silver. I've liked Johnny Silver for years. He's entertaining as shit.
He is, and they all got their shots in. They all got over this. And now, I did wonder where Colt Cabana was during all this.
Yeah.
So
I don't think he knows what he wants to do. He just enjoys putting wins in the win column. I don't think he particularly enjoys being evil. He looks very uncomfortable with it. Who knows? It's an interesting story. I wonder where Colt lays.
We should find out soon enough. So let's head on over to our next topic. Now, this is a pretty generic topic, Bob. This is storylines. And I more or less just wanted to say that the storylines in AEW overall since October, I would give a B+ overall. They have done a great job with many of them. Where my issue with storylines is that they build up these storylines so good. Let's go back to the Cody versus MJF.
Yeah.
Cody had to go through these, 5 steps, the steel cage match with Wardlow, the lashes. Then they had the match at Revolution. My opinion, it was a pretty lackluster match. MJF gets the win, and then nothing else happens. It just stopped because Lance Archer debuted and Jake the Snake, that's my only issue with these storylines is that they do such a great job of building them up. They just don't deliver.
Yeah.
And they don't give you closure. They're just kind of they're just dropped.
Well, then they build up to War Games too, and then because of COVID, they never had the opportunity to deliver on that. But that was really a fascinating build, and I look forward to, obviously we're not going to get the same people in that match, I don't think. But as soon as we can get back to people in the building, I think we're going to get back to War Games. But I do have to agree with you there that whole build for Cody MJF had me emotionally invested the whole time. And it's very tough for me, both of us being in the wrestling business. I don't know about you, but for me, it's very tough to get emotionally invested in a feud anymore or what I'm watching on TV. But I could not wait for Cody to get his hands on MJF at Revolution. And I was happy to pay that money to see it. And then have an MJF squeak out a victory, it was perfect booking in my opinion, but the match itself underwhelmed. So I do agree with you there. But then you have scenarios like you're building up Moxley and Mr. Brody Lee. The build-up for that really wasn't that great in my opinion, but the match itself was phenomenal. I was entertained, and I'm not somebody that enjoys John Moxley's work between the ropes. I enjoy his promo and the build to matches, but I'm not seeking out a John Moxley match. I thought that was a good build, but right now what they're doing with stories is just, I think it's great. And you listen to the internet talking oh, AEW doesn't do stories. They don't have any stories for their match. I'm like, what are you watching? Because I'm watching every week. And I'm seeing so many underlying things that are going on. They might not be directly giving it to you, but it's all innuendo, and that's fun to me.
Well, we mentioned it earlier, FTR. FTR, when they first wrestled, they did this to Tully Blanchard in the stands. The camera showed Tully. Tully was scouting them, and they did this after a slingshot suplex, and that was 6 weeks ago.
Exactly.
So they are dropping nuggets along the way.
AEW is like DVDs back in the day. They drop Easter eggs every episode, and you have to pay attention because if you pay attention, they're going to pay it off for you.
I agree. And I, for one, love the build-up between Cage and Moxley. I thought, having Taz manage Cage was a great. And I don't have the topic for this, but let's just give an honorable mention to Taz and Shivani. That they bring legitimacy to the broadcast booth, And AEW does a great job of utilizing these guys who many wrestling fans probably thought were no longer going to be involved in the business.
I agree.
And they've made them household names again, which I just think is amazing. I mean, just think Tony Schiavone was the lead announcer for Nitro from 95 to 01, and now he's back on TNT.
I absolutely love Tony Schiavone, and I love that I still in 2020 get to hear Tony Schiavone every week on my TV doing what he does best, and that's calling professional wrestling. I love hearing Taz every week. I am a huge Taz fan, both in-ring work, his radio broadcasting. I used to listen to his sports show. I love Taz all around. I would love to bring Excalibur back and have the team of Excalibur, Taz, and Tony Schiavone every week, and have JR move to some sort of backstage interview position, because I don't think JR has the capability to adapt to wrestling in 2020.
Well, for our topic of storylines, there's at least 1 or 2 times a week where JR makes fun of the referees being out of place, takes a shot at the tag rope, takes a shot at he's using a chair and the referee is right there. And do you think that's a build for like a heel JR character, or do you think that's just JR not giving a shit anymore?
Honestly, I think it's just JR, and he comes off as kind of a malcontent, like he's just taking a paycheck where he can get one. But like, I don't know, it's tough to tell. Like, I respect JR for everything he's done in the wrestling business, but I just think it's time to find a new position for him, because I think at times he can hurt the product with what he's broadcasting. And wrestling in 2020, like it or not, be it right or wrong, is very different than what we watched in the 90s. And like, the rules are different. And what a lot of people, I think, need to also separate is, just because WWE created rules for referees and whatnot doesn't mean that all of professional wrestling has to follow these rules. Like when it comes to tagging in and out, hitting tag moves in AEW, they have a 10-second rule. WWE has a 5-second rule. That's fine. Just establish that. Instead, it almost buries the referees and makes the referee look foolish, which the referee is more important to a match than most people would think. And I don't know. I would like to see. I love JR. I respect JR. I want to see him move to like a backstage interviewer. Like, who's that? Alex Marvez or something? Get rid of that jabroni and put JR in that role, and do more interview segments like you did in WCW at the top of the ramp that Schiavone or Okerlund used to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think JR would be great in that role.
I agree.
Wrapping up the storylines, again, I'm going to mention it one more time. Dark Order kind of stood tall this past week. Cody Rhodes may be taking some time off, and Dark Order established themselves. So I'm quite interested to see where they go with the undercard for All Out next week, because only a few matches have been announced.
I don't think they've really announced anything yet. You have Moxley and MJF.
The tag title match.
The tag title match we know is going to happen. We just don't know who the challenger is. Hikaru Shida doesn't have a #1 contender. Who do you think steps into that?
Penelope Ford, I hope, because I'm just a big fan of Penelope Ford. That's just
I am too, but we just got that. You need something fresh for a pay-per-view. Because they are still very much a pay-per-view company where they're charging $50 for a pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to have something fresh and enticing. Do you go Britt Baker? Is Britt Baker ready?
Yeah. If she's not, it's not going to be a great match. Did anybody who got released from WWE recently, is any big female names? I can't think on the top of my head.
Oh, that's right. No. I got to double back. I'm wrong. They essentially announced excuse me, allergy season's killing me. So Thunder Rosa made her debut.
That's right. Oh my gosh, NWA, yes.
Yeah, she made her debut with the NWA Women's Championship. So at that point, I think it was alluded that Thunder Rosa against Hikaru Shida. And that's a match I'd like to see. I think that's a very credible women's title match for a pay-per-view.
And it's funny because we mentioned earlier Ricky Starks, and
I love Ricky Starks.
What's his name? He just, oh gosh, what's his name? We just came back. No,
Brian Cage?
he hugged the heels. Butcher
Eddie Kingston.
Eddie Kingston. all these guys came from the NWA because they've kind of been sitting at home doing nothing.
Yeah.
So they're, from what I read online, is that there is some kind of a talent agreement exchange between the two.
And that's
I don't.
awesome.
It is awesome. I don't see any AEW guys wrestling for the NWA anytime soon. But
I want to see everybody gang up together on WWE.
So do
wanna see, I want to see super shows. Like, I want to see ROH versus Impact versus AEW versus New Japan. Like, I want to see that stuff versus NWA. Like, there is so much talent out there that they can accomplish that. Like, remember back in the day when WCW used to go with New Japan, and even in more recent memory, ROH used to do super shows with New Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's money to be made, and like, I don't know if it's they've alluded to Impact and AEW working together and doing a trade-off series between the North and FTR. Do a home and home series, like do a best out of 3 with those two tag teams. And that's something I'd love to see. And I think that needs to be the future of wrestling, because that's what you have to do to topple WWE.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, WWE, in my opinion, is primed for the picking.
I think so too. And if they do something like that, then you have Impact, which nobody watches. But do you think I would watch it if FTR was on it? You're damn right.
Oh, absolutely. I'm tuning in to see them against the Machine Guns, them against the North, them against the Good Brothers. Like, I'll tune in for that.
They can make it somewhat of a territory system.
Exactly.
Tony Khan, Bob and I are available. We will
we're
work
ready.
in Florida.
I could do it via Zoom, whatever you need.
We're in the home stretch here, Bob. We are going to discuss one thing that you think AEW does really well. I want you to start.
All right, cool. So for me, the one thing I think AEW does really well, promos. They do one hell of a job of. So I take myself out every pay-per-view. I try to do it mentally. I try to live a kayfabe lifestyle, and I want you to sell me the pay-per-view. I'm not going to buy it unless you sell it to me. AEW, how many pay-per-views have they had now? Just say 6. I think they've had about 5 or 6 pay-per-views. They're 6 for 6 in selling me pay-per-views, and they just sold me the pay-per-view after this past week based on everything they did with MJF and everything they did with Mr. Brody Lee. I'm excited for it. They do promos well, they do stories well, and they do builds well. But more importantly, when the bell rings, it's exciting, and it doesn't feel the same. There are no 2 matches on any AEW Dynamite that feel the same as one another. And that, to me, is most importantly. And I hate to just keep burying the Fed, but every time you tune into Raw or SmackDown, every match feels the same, and it's starting to be that way with NXT now, and that hurts my soul.
I agree 100% with what you just said, because NXT was probably, even with AEW having their shows last summer and early in the fall, I was always watching NXT first. And something happened along, like, I'd say November, December, where I was like, you know what? I got to start watching AEW because it's fresh.
So for me, when they went to USA was the big step down.
Yeah.
Like for NXT's existence before that, it felt like this company is like, how is this under the WWE umbrella?
They were like underground, being through the network.
Yeah.
Like you had to go out of your way to watch them, and there was something like ECW like about it.
Yeah.
And not with the in-ring action, but like with it's underground, that everybody was talking about NXT. It was and they delivered Gargano and Ciampa and Cole and everybody. And then now you have these guys who are making it to the main roster. And it's like, that's a demotion, if you ask me.
Sure. Like,
we saw it last night. Yeah.
Keith Lee last night. Oh, God damn, he's fat. Put a shirt on him and some baggy shorts. It looked like he was wearing Samoa Joe's panties to the ring last night. Like, what the hell are they doing? Like, Keith Lee's a star. He's got the charisma of a John Cena. Like, he's the guy you send to Good Morning America. Let him do all the press. Like, it's painful to see already in night 1.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's not what we're talking about right now. What do you think AEW does really well?
Well, I grew up in watching the NWA in the late 80s, early 90s. And I also watched WBF. And one thing that I think they do really well is the tag team division. FTR is by far my number one tag team. I love the Lucha Brothers. I think they're phenomenal, and they first came on my radar thanks to AEW. They're okay.
I'm a Bucks guy through
Young
and
Bucks
through.
will be in my top 5. They'll probably
I'm a
be
Bucks
4 or
guy.
5. But SCU, the Death Triangle, but we haven't really seen Pac lately.
I miss Pac. Come back soon, Pac.
Yes. The tag team division, and now you have Taz and Ricky Starks working together against Darby Allin. The tag team division, I mean, I grew up on the Midnight Express versus the Fantastics.
Which Midnight Express, though?
Oh, Eaton and Lane. That was me.
Okay, good. Yeah, me too, because I got in an argument with our producer extraordinaire over the correct Midnight Express. But continue.
No, the correct Midnight Express was Eaton and Lane.
Beautiful Bobby, sweet Stan.
Yes. So, like, FTR has, I don't know, I don't want to gush over them, but it's a love affair I have. They have made me care. And Butcher and Blade, I don't want to leave them out. There's so many tag teams out there that tag team wrestling matters now. And let's be honest, you have 4 guys who can go 2 versus 2. You have a 15-minute match where every guy can get their spot in, every guy can get offense, get their defense, and everybody looks good. You can have and there's part of your show right there establishing 2 tag teams. God forbid you throw a 4-cornered match or an elimination style match.
Sure.
And you could take over a show with tag team wrestling. And if you tried doing that on Raw or SmackDown, like you said earlier, it would be 2 singles guys that were put together by Vince McMahon that didn't belong. Or the worst is when you get 2 opponents for a big pay-per-view and the week before they're forced to team up.
They're doing it on Raw right now. They have the Strange Bedfellows tag team. That's what I like to call them. They have Strange Bedfellows tag team and Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler because they have a pay-per-view after a pay-per-view on consecutive Sundays, so they need something. So now all of a sudden Baszler and Nia Jax are teaming up. I just don't care. I'm not invested.
Yeah. No, because you know it's going to end with them. It's just
schmozzy or
it's
put
poor.
The belts on them and then they'll divide and like everything WWE does right now is like, oh, we used to be best friends or we used to work together, but now we're enemies, and it's just tired. I'm sick of it.
I agree 100%. So then now we're going to wrap up the show with this topic here. So we mentioned about one thing that they did really well. What is one thing that you think AEW should improve on?
You want me to start?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. The women's division. I don't think that they have a strong enough presence on Dynamite every week. And I really think they need to highlight the strong women of the division. I think Anna Jay is a talent. I think, like Britt Baker, she could stand to have more TV time, give her more promo time. But then you get into this situation. I get what they're doing, so I can't argue with them. They're putting their strengths on TV. And right now their women's division is a huge weakness. Right. So they're pushing it to YouTube, like that whole women's tournament. I don't know how much of it you watched on YouTube, but a lot of it was embarrassing.
Yeah.
Like some of the action was terrible. Like they had that one Funkadactyl on there, and she's just god awful and has no business in the wrestling business.
The un-Naomi.
But like I think if they want people to take their women's division seriously, like when's the last time you saw Hikaru Shida on Dynamite? Right. She's the champion. Like they had the same thing with Rio.
She's on Dynamite. She's in the stands holding her championship belt, but she's not in the ring. I got you.
But she needs to, even if she has enhancement matches, like just pick up a quick win. Like you can spend 4 minutes on an enhancement match. Mm-hmm. Like have her be a dominant defending champion. And then build her up with like Penelope Ford. You're not seeing Kip Sabian on TV anymore, so you're not seeing Penelope Ford. Britt Baker's getting a backstage segment, but this week we had a women's tag match. It was actually pretty good. And I'm not a fan of Brandy Rhodes being in the ring or Allie being in the ring. I think they're both glorified valets at best. But like,
and you know all about valets.
I do. I got a good one. She goes missing every week or so. But no, like you've got people like they've signed Diamante, you've got Abaddon, you've got Eva Lise. Eva Lise is as legit as it gets. Like if you watched her work on Lucha Underground, she's incredibly talented. She can wrestle with the best of the boys too.
Well, it's funny you mention this because they recently got rid of Bea Priestley, who I was a big fan of. I thought she was great in the ring, but I guess they didn't.
So what upsets me most about losing Bea Priestley is you lose your connection to Will Ospreay. And I think Will Ospreay is the best wrestler not signed in the United States right now. So that's what hurt me about that. But I think a lot of that has to do with COVID and the lack of travel from overseas. Yeah. It's unfortunate. I think she'll be back. And like they got rid of Sadie Gibbs too, who is an upstart and somebody that had a lot of potential. But if you're not going to spend the time or effort on the women's division, why are you going to keep on the payroll? So I get that aspect of things. So that's what I think they need to improve on is women's division. I am all for Britt Baker in 2020 and 2021.
Well, I'm gonna agree with you on your women's division because I think that they need to improve that as well. But my main point, and I said this earlier, so I hate to repeat myself, but I want to go into a little bit of depth, and that is they do such a great job of building up storylines, but then they don't give us any closure with the storylines. And I think it's okay to have open-ended storylines. Like you don't always have to end and that's it. Start a new chapter. You can always kind of have things bleeding into each other. I think some of the best in my life as a fan, some of the best storylines were bleeding. You always had Dusty Rhodes and the Horsemen, but you didn't have Dusty Rhodes versus Ric Flair every night for 6 months.
Exactly.
There was Arn Anderson versus Dusty, and Dusty.
And that's why faction warfare helps and it works.
Right. Well, right. And the factions are great. They have a lot of factions. Now they just need to start beating each other up. But
exactly.
In my mind, I want more closure to the storylines. Give me the big matches. Build up the Four Horsemen. Build up MJF to take Moxley's title. But then, I want to see Moxley lose next Saturday, and then I want him to revoke his rematch clause on Wednesday's Dynamite afterwards. And let's get Moxley to put over MJF again. You do it twice in 1 week, then MJF is legit. He's a champion and he's your champion, and
exactly.
That's something I would love to see. That they're doing a great job of building up that storyline. I want to see them finish the storyline and then give me closure. And then you can send Moxley to put somebody else over. Who knows? Exactly. I see Moxley going after Cage for that FTW championship, which would be good. It would elevate Cage.
I agree, and it would also elevate that title.
Yeah.
Because right now that title doesn't mean anything.
No.
But that's like a counterculture title. Like that's the kind of title Moxley would go after. And like that title should hold some sort of I'm drawing a blank on the word right now. Some sort of situation for that title where there's no rules. Mm-hmm. Like whenever that FTW title's defended, there's like, for a lack of a better term, extreme rules.
That's a great idea because the TNT championship has become a bona fide TV championship.
Which it should be. And I think a TV title's awesome. And I love tuning in every week knowing I'm getting a title match.
Well, Mr. Brody Lee did not.
Just my wheels are turning. So who comes after Brody Lee to avenge the loss of Cody? Matt Cardona for the pay-per-view.
There you go. See, that's great. Well, I think it's going to be Dustin, but I mean, Matt Cardona would work.
Dustin's
especially
dead.
Since
they killed him.
That's true. They dragged him and what's his name out? His training partner.
Marshall. They killed the whole Nightmare family. They're all dead.
They're all going to star on heels.
I was yelling at the TV when they went after Arn. My buddy
so
and I were watching. They're like, enough is enough. Get your hands off him. Oh, I was yelling at the TV. I was enjoying it.
What? And for those of you who haven't watched it, please go back, watch it. It's on YouTube. What I loved when Brandy got over her man, tried to defend her man. That's enough, and gave this evil look to Brody Lee, Mr. Brody Lee, and then I'm like, wait a second, she's right there, and then bang! It was just the female Dark Order member gets on top of, and I was like, that makes sense. That is something that makes sense.
And then they go off TV with complete carnage, and Cody's reaching for his wife's hand to try to help her, and neither of them can help each other. It was great TV.
And I just see Arn Anderson reaching out to get revenge, and I just see FTR just be.
Yep.
It's a love story, Bob.
You don't trust an Anderson.
I do because I love heels. I love heels. I trust Anderson to make the right choice for my entertainment.
You don't trust an Anderson.
Well, look, guys, we thank you for tuning in. We almost went an hour. We almost went Broadway, Bob.
I know. You got anything to talk about for 4.5 more minutes?
You know, I'm sure I could, but we're going to cut it short here because you know what?
Maybe
Bob,
some things?
Well, yeah, go for it. Do you have some news?
I got nothing. I'm all talked out. I need a new cocktail.
Well, yeah, my water bottle's empty as well. So we discussed tonight the state of AEW. I think next week, let's talk about the state of NXT. What do you say, Bob?
Oof. All right. That's going to be a painful one for me. It's something I used to love so much, and now I'm on the outs with it. It's like a bad relationship. We're in the process of breaking up, but I just can't tell her to go.
So let me ask you this as a fan, because I DVR both. Do you watch AEW live and then watch NXT on DVR?
AEW uninterrupted live. I sit through the commercial breaks and I watch the picture-in-picture. I can't be interrupted. I don't want to miss a moment of AEW.
I'm with you. Now,
and then I watch NXT on Fridays on the network.
You know, it's 2020 and we watch TV differently now because now we watch TV like this.
Oh, exactly.
So I try to partake in your conversations on the Facebook channel and in this corner, but I start my AEW live or taped at 8:40 so I can just fast forward through commercials. And then by the time the show ends, I'm live. So I don't always partake in the conversations because I don't want to be spoiled for what I'm going to see.
Understandable.
But I'll tell you, NXT is really, in my opinion, they kind of dropped the ball. And it's unfortunate because we haven't really seen much of Undisputed Era. We haven't really seen much. Well, now we know that Lee is going to Raw, and they gave him new music and a new outfit. So he's already changed. He's not the same character. To me, NXT will always be Ciampa, Gargano, Cole, and I love Cross. I hope he's not injured too badly.
I'm not a fan of Cross. We'll get into that next week. And
good.
I look forward to offering the counterpoint to your point on Karrion Kross.
Well, look, I look forward to it as well. So, for Bob, well, you know what? Before I say my goodbyes, let's make sure you hit that subscribe button below. Got Mark 76, DJB Productions Network. For Bob Stedford, I am Mark Lindsay. We will see you next time when we talk about the state of NXT. Goodbye, everybody.
The proceeding was brought to you by Got Mark 76 in association with That Way Cool Wrestling Show. Please subscribe to Got Mark 76 and DJB Productions Network on YouTube. And until next time, we'll see you at the matches.